Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Cimmerian September, a BookTube event inaugurated this year by Michael K. Vaughan, designed to drive you all to read some Conan by Robert E. Howard as Robert E. Howard wrote it. Which is a complicated thing to do on its own right. I'm learning more and more about that as the month goes on. You are supposed to take down either the one-volume Gollancz collection of everything that Conan that Robert E. Howard wrote, or the 3 paperback volumes by Del Rey that are wonderful and they're full of original illustrations. I have been happy to make this a month of celebrating all things Conan. I've been reading a huge amount, rereading a huge amount. Every once in a while, I get a yen to do this. Just happened that Mike's event came along at just the right time. And the way that I'm observing Cimmerian September is to read Marvel Comics' old black and white magazine, The Savage Sword of Conan, which they did as a kind of adults-only companion to their 4-color superhero comic, Conan the Barbarian. I've read a lot of Savage Sword of Conan, but in the month, this September, I've read a lot of these issues that I'd never encountered before. I stuck with Savage Sword and really liked it up until probably about issue 100, and then for 50 more issues or so, I kept going, but they weren't really doing much for me, and then I stopped. So there were 100 issues that I basically didn't read, every one here and there, but otherwise no. And I've been looking at a lot of those for the Savage Sword of September, for my own Cimmerian September observation. But lately I've been looking at some earlier issues as well. And I reread one last night that I have to share with you. This is all the way back to issue number 20. So this is back to the time when I was not only buying Savage Sword of Conan, but was deeply loving it. Absolutely loving what I was seeing. This is the writing is by Roy Thomas, who did most of the writing for Savage Sword of Conan. The artwork's by John Buscema, who did a lot of the best artwork. And the inking, the embellishing here is by Alfredo Alcala, who does a great job embellishing Conan. Just fantastic. Embellishing John Buscema's pencils, I think. I just love the way he does them. Adds such Gustave Doré texture to it all. And this is their adaptation of the Robert E. Howard Conan story, The Slithering Shadow. There you have a Roram cover, is that right? A Norum cover? Yeah, there's a Norum cover there. I really would love a big compendium of this particular cover artist's work. Not just for Savage Sword, but for everywhere else where he did covers. But he did a lot for Conan. They're all worth keeping. They're all beautiful and deserve a nice big book. Maybe there is one that I just don't know about. We get, as with all issues of Savage Sword of Conan, you get all sorts of extras. Like, for instance, this opens with a Conan pinup by Neil Adams. But then we get to the story itself, which finds Conan and a female companion of his, who was a camp follower in the army where he was stationed. That army has been wiped out. And he and Natala, the camp follower, are the only survivors. They took off on a camel into the desert to elude pursuit. And that's where the story finds them. The camel is dead, and they are dying of thirst. They're under the merciless sun. See what I mean by Alcala's embellishing? That is just incredible. They have barely any water left and no real hope of surviving. Buscema gives us a very leisurely beginning here where it shows their hopeless plight. When suddenly, in the Robert E. Howard story, which premiered in Weird Tales, it even got a cover for Weird Tales. It got a cover for one particular detail in the story that the editor of Weird Tales really liked, and he got the impression from his sales figures that his readers really liked it, that if you put a figure of female-on-female violence on the cover, the issue will sell. Best not to dig too deep into that. But in the Robert E. Howard story and in Roy Thomas's adaptation, which would never have made it into the monthly comic Conan the Barbarian, Conan realizes that they are doomed and thinks that he will kill Natala to give her a merciful death. It'll be quick, it'll be painless. If he does it right, she won't even know it's happening. She'll just be, rather than suffer, he will suffer for days and days and days, but she doesn't have to. He's right on the edge of doing that when they spot the impossible. A city, far in the distance. They think it might be a mirage, but it's not a mirage. It's the city of Zuthal, which turns out to be one enormous palace that was built over an oasis. So it has water supplies. It has greenery. It was built over an oasis that would allow it to live in the middle of a vast desert where there's nothing else anywhere around. And they enter. The door is open. They find a guardsman who is lying there dead. But he then attacks them. He gets up and attacks them. There is a well. They're dying of thirst still. But the water is 50 feet down with no way to draw it up. And before they can even deal with that, this dead guardsman is up again. He's alive again and attacks them. Conan kills him and disposes of his body down the well that they can't use. And then they go into one of the various buildings of the palace. Wonderful detail work here. Just wonderful. As they look around, they find a banquet table, fully laid out, but with no one around. They eat and drink their full, but Natala is worried. The place feels evil to her. She can't put her finger on it, but the place feels evil. Conan is a lot more resigned when it comes to that. But they sense a movement, a sound, something scraping along the stone. Conan goes to investigate, sword in hand, and she goes with him. They see a man, apparently asleep. Or maybe dead. I mean, the guard looked dead. And a shadow is approaching that man. And eventually, it takes that man. And they encounter someone else. A man with half-closed eyes who says, "You are the most arresting figures from a dream that I have ever seen. I dream all the time, and I've never dreamt of anything as beautiful as your yellow tresses." Conan has to pound on the guy, and when Conan does, he says, be gone. You're just a dream. I'm ordering you to disappear. It's beyond this guy's imagination that Conan would be real. And when Conan mentions that, what are you doing? What are you doing? When Conan mentions that they just saw a shadow devour a man, the man that they're seeing flees in terror. He's terrified of the very mention of a moving shadow in this big city. And before they can chase him or figure out what has made him fly off in a fear, they meet someone else. She doesn't look like anyone else in the city. She's a Stygian. And her name is Thalis. And she is a classic John Buscema pin-up girl, just va-va-voom. They meet her. And she doesn't seem hostile. She wants to explain to them where they are. The Zusal is a dreaming city. Its inhabitants are permanently stupefied by an extract of the black lotus flower. It's basically an opium den, only far more effective. So that they most of the time lie around so insensate that, thanks to the effects of the drug, a passerby would think they were dead. And even when they're awake, they are inhabiting a dream. The man that Conan and Natala meet thinks he's dreaming. Even when they're walking around, they're not really paying attention to their surroundings. She actually mentions it. She mentions this. Let's see here. Here, I want to give her exact quote. Let's see here. Through the ages, people have cultivated it, meaning the black lotus that grows in the pits of the city, until instead of death, its juice induces gorgeous and fantastic dreams. In these dreams, they spend most of their time. Their lives are vague, erratic, without plan. They dream, they wake, drink, love, eat, and dream again. That meal you found, doubtless one awoke, hungry, prepared the meal, then forgot it, and wandered away to dream once more. She's not one of them. She was brought to this place as a child. So she's not accustomed. She's not one of them herself. And has far more active appetites, including for Conan. She becomes enraptured of Conan on sight. But Conan and Natala have another question to ask, which is about that creeping shadow. They're not sure about that creeping shadow at all. Conan wants to know how all of this thing works, and she fills him in. He says, "Where do they get their food? I saw no fields or vineyards." And she says they manufacture their own food out of the primal elements. They're wonderful scientists when not drugged with their dream flower. And Conan says, "And the dead man at the gate?" And she says, "Doubtless sleeping. Lotus sleepers are like the dead. It is impossible to detect the slightest sign of life." And Conan says, "Where are the people now? There's nobody around." And she says, "Scattered here and there. They're all sleeping." And Conan says, "What of that thing that stole through the chamber and carried away a man on a couch?" And she says, "As I've said, that was Thog the Magnificent. Thog the Ancient. The people of Zuthal worship him. Mostly he sleeps below the city, but at irregular intervals he grows hungry and comes up to seek prey. Then none is safe. And Conan says, Crom, you mean these people lie down calmly and sleep with this demon crawling among them? And she says, it's only occasionally that he's hungry, and a god must have his sacrifices, must he not? uh, she assures Conan that if Thog wants to come for you, you're dead anyway, so there's no use in worrying. There's no escape. There's an endless desert on all sides. What is your exact quote? Conan says, I'm not desirous of sitting where black shadows might steal upon my back. And Dallas says, be at ease. If Thog wishes you, he will take you wherever you are. She tells them about the city and thinks nothing of it. She doesn't seem hostile, but we know that she is. She's hostile to Natala. She wants Conan for her own. And at one point, she is leading them. She says, I won't keep you against your will. I'll show you the way out of the city. And she pulls Natala through a door and slams it shut to a stone wall. And has evil designs. Look at that artwork. She has evil designs on Natala, who fights back. Natala is being carried. She just lugs her around like a piece of luggage. But Natala grabs the dagger at her belt and wounds her with it. And that is when Thalas, first of all, disarms her, because she's immensely powerful. She's far more powerful than Natala. Then slugs her, then drags her by the hair down the hallway, strings her up, and flogs her. And the flogging scene was on the cover of Weird Tales, only neither one of them was wearing any clothing. Something about that motif seemed to get Weird Tales fans all excited. And Natala is having such a good time flogging, Thalas is having such a good time flogging Natala that she neglects to notice that Thog the Ancient is creeping up behind her until it's too late. She sees this thing in shadow, very wise decision on Buscema's part, that we don't see Thog until it is menacing our heroine, until it is menacing Natala. And then we do. And we see Thog. Now, in the story, in Robert E. Howard's story, Thog is very nebulous. He has lots of tentacles and coils and whatnot, but he is very much a kind of nebulous elder god type character, the type of thing that Robert E. Howard wrote quite a bit. Here we get a far more physical appearance to Thog. He does still have tentacles, but he has kind of hands and a big gigantic leering mouth and bulbous eyes and pad-like feet, and he is approaching her. And she has, I want to read you some of this overheated prose, because she has a horrifying realization. As it caresses, she knows each fear and shame as she has never dreamt of. All the obscenity and salacious infamy spawned in the muck of the abysmal pits of life seem to drown her in seas of cosmic filth. And in that instant, she knows whatever form of life this thing may be, it is not a beast. Which is just horrifying. Thog is intelligent, and whatever he's doing to her, it's only when you get to that panel that you remember that when Thalas falls into his clutches, she is pulled in, and we hear her say, "No, don't." He doesn't kill her right away. He doesn't eat her. He's doing something else to her first, and he's going to do that same thing to our heroine while Conan is busy. He's not only busy with a stone wall, but he's also busy with Zuthal's very tardy defenders. He hacks his way through them. They're not all that effective. And finally finds, he is dropped into the pit of this creature just in time to defend Natala. He attacks Thog, and he is surprised by the fact that Thog is very much flesh. He's not invulnerable. He's not unreachable. In fact, he's weak flesh. He's watery flesh. So that every blow that Conan strikes is doing real damage. And he keeps doing it. We have a classic Conan versus the monster fight. Thog turns away from his victim and attacks Conan instead. His blood is venom. He is also dripping venom all over Conan. And Conan is just continuing to fight. He bites one of the tentacles, hacks into Thog's mouth, hacks in another panel at his eye. Conan's #1 strategy for fighting monsters is to blind them, attack their eye. And it goes on forever and ever, with Thog thrashing and bucking as they get closer and closer to the pit that we think maybe Thog came from, until finally they fall into the pit. Look at this artwork. Just amazing. Conan grabs the edge. Even though he's covered in slime, he grabs the edge. Thog does not. Thog falls down into the abyss. Maybe dead, maybe not. We don't know. Conan eventually he stares down into the pit for a while. And then he comes to find Natala, and we see something amazing, something that you wouldn't see in the color comic book. We see the damage that Thog's venom did to Conan. He is badly disfigured. His body is swollen, his face is misshapen, and he is dying. He frees his companion. They use a radium globe, a little nod of the head there to Edgar Rice Burroughs. They use a radium globe to get out of the pit, but Conan can barely stand. She goes to one of the sleepers' rooms where they have their special liquor and gives it to Conan, and it completely revives him. He feels good as new, and they decide to make their escape. They fill containers with food and water and get out of the city. This is another instance where Conan does the superhuman. They come across golden bars, and Conan just rips them apart like they were confetti. I'd like to see Robert E. Howard do that, let alone Roy Thomas. But nevertheless, he's Conan. We'll give him a mulligan. And it's possible that Conan has killed all of the defenders that are actually here. It's possible they could have walked out straight through the door. But they do. They leave Zuthal behind. They don't know how many people are still alive in what is one big palace complex, and they don't know if Thog is still alive. No idea. Don't want to know. They just head off. At one point, Thalas tells them that there's an oasis a day's march away. They're going to make for that and hope that they find it in time. And that is it. That is the end of the story. The rest of the issue is... there's a wonderful piece here on Solomon Kane. It adapts a poem that Solomon Kane wrote, that Robert E. Howard wrote. The artwork is by Virgilio Redondo, but it's the inks that make it. The inks are by Rudy Nebres, a fantastic Doctor Strange inker, who here gives us all sorts of Solomon Kane vignettes. They don't serve to make Solomon Kane very interesting, but they are beautiful. They are very beautiful. They'll probably never be collected anywhere else, unless they're in that big Solomon Kane volume that Michael K. Vaughan showed on his channel. I didn't notice what was actually in that thing. It could be that backup stories like this are in there. Makes me wonder what else is in there. Like, for instance, for one of the Marvel Showcase titles that I mentioned yesterday, Marvel Premiere, for one of those, Howard Chaykin, the great comic book artist, the great and now controversial comic book artist Howard Chaykin, did a Solomon Kane adventure. He drew it. I don't know that he wrote it, but he definitely drew it. I wonder if that's in that volume. And the back of this issue shows black and white photos from SonyaCon, where there was a Robert E. Howard convention. A whole bunch of comic book people went there, and they hired an actress to play Red Sonja. And there's a picture of a very young Howard Chaykin ogling her, ogling the model there. And we also, in a great little note here, we get a picture of Roy Thomas, who is essentially Red Sonja's creator. We get a picture of him with this artist as well, which is terrific. Here, let me find it. I'm skipping the page accidentally here. Oh no! Now I know it's in here. See, this is the problem with print stuff like this: is that it's never easy to get. Yes, there is the actress in Red Sonja's chainmail bikini, her classic chainmail bikini. And there is Roy Thomas, the creator of Red Sonja, in his 70s attire. It's a classic picture. Imagine that. So your character that you basically create becomes so popular that it anchors a convention of its own, and you get an actress to play that character to a T, and you get to pose with it. Imagine what that must be like. Imagine that happened to Mike Mignola. I imagine that he has posed with the various actors who played Hellboy. I don't know how many writers it has happened with, but that's terrific. This is a terrific issue. It's just a terrific adaptation of a Robert E. Howard story. I love it. I've always loved it. I'm amazed that I kept it in such good shape for so long, since this came out in... when did this come out? 1977. Good Lord. When I had been thinking for years and years, boy, wouldn't it be amazing if I actually lived to see the bicentennial? 1776 to 1976. And then I did, and after that, all of my wouldn't it be great to see if I live were all dark. They were all foreboding. I was thinking, well, sure, I live to see the bicentennial, but there's no chance I'll live to see 1984, the actual year 1984. And then I did. And in 1984, I was thinking, okay, well, that happened, but there is no way in the world that I will reach 2001. You know, I might like the movie, but there's no way any of us will live to see the year 2001. And here I am making a video about this issue in 2023. I loved it. I love this issue. I'm going to try not to fall down the well here of just revisiting old Savage Sword of Conan issues that I know I love, but I might not be able to resist. Cimmerian September only has a week left. It might be fun to do that. But anyway, that is your Conan, your blast of Conan for today is the Slithering Shadow. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I will see you next time. Thank you, BookTube.